people in so mmany ways. Therefore, fill us all with the knowledge of your holy word, as it states, that to whom much is given, much more is required. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 2nd December 2025 to be confirmed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
The questions that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 16th December 2025 to be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honour, the Speaker. Messages from His Excellency the President. Petitions, papers. Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The questions that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 10, in the name of the Honourable Leader of the House, to move the second reading of the Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2025.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the outset, I would want to formally wish all of my colleagues and certainly the general public a happy new year. We ended last year, I believe, on a high with much to be thankful for. And all of us certainly look forward to a year that allows us to fulfill a number of the promises, a number of the expectations of the general public. And I expect that certainly my colleagues on this side will continue to do the work that the people of this country have sent us here to do. It is in that vein, Mr. Speaker, that I have the responsibility this morning to be able to lead a debate in relation to an amendment to the Road Traffic Act. It is no mystery to this chamber or to the public that the Road Traffic Act is one of the pieces of legislation that has been perhaps most tampered with, most amended over the course of decades. It is a piece of legislation that came into effect in 1981. And it governs the regulation of traffic in Barbados. It includes the vehicle registration process, the licensing process, and certainly provision being made for safety measures to allow for commuters to traverse the roads of the island. We also have accompanying the Road Traffic Act a number of regulations made by virtue of that piece of legislation. They govern as well licensing, vehicle registration requirements such as the inspection, the taxation, insurance, and traffic, and certainly conduct in relation to traffic rules, as well as offenses and penalties in respect of violations. The Act has been amended on many occasions, primarily because it has had to respond, or rather legislation has had to respond to safety issues in many cases, the number of vehicles on the road, the changes in technology. And as a consequence, we have had to keep up to date with what the overseas, the international trends are, certainly the regional trends, in relation to amendments to this specific piece of legislation. And today, therefore, I have the pleasure of being able to yet again make the necessary amendments to this particular piece of legislation. Over the years, we've seen amendments to things like the seatbelt rules, which again was a measure to ensure that people were kept safe, and certainly in particular our children. We have seen the abolition of road tax and the introduction of registration fees, certainly by this administration during its tenure in the last few years. And we've also seen the regulations passed for the windscreen and windows regulation, which was passed to address the issues of road safety, to improve visibility and compliance with the law enforcement. And I refer specifically to last year's amendment in relation to what Bajans simply refer to as tint. It is therefore not unusual that these amendments have come in respect of this piece of legislation. And therefore today, this particular bill states, if you look at it, that it is an amendment to make better provision for the prescribing of fixed penalties for certain offenses. So as I start at the outset, let me say that fixed penalties, which I will proceed to explain, already exist in the existing legislation. But what we seek here to do is to make improvements to modernize and to make the system for the payment of fixed penalties a lot more efficient than it currently is. In particular, we want to be able to make sure that the general public, who has been frustrated from time to time with having to have a ticketed offense, they go and they have a traffic violation, and they spend lots of time before the courts, taking a lot of productive time out of their day to be able to go down to the law courts. And everybody has to turn up on time. Everybody has to make sure that they clock in to the magistrate's court in many cases, and they spend an entire day before the system. We believe that a fixed penalty regime is necessary, but the fact that we have had no amendments to this legislation for such a long time is also a reflection that it is now time to pay some attention to this particular regime that allows people, once they are ticketed, to be able to pay these penalties not only a lot faster, but to avoid the situation where we are clogging up our law courts, we're wasting a lot of productive time of our officials, and we're wasting productive time of our citizens as well. So what is a fixed penalty is one of the things that we need to address. What is the existing regime? What are we seeking to do today to make that regime better? And through the course of this presentation this morning, I will seek to answer all of those questions to assure the public that what we do here today is really in their interests, and certainly in the interest of modernizing the court system, but also making our roads safer and certainly modernizing the existing system. If you take a look at Section 12110 of the Road Traffic Act, it provides that a fixed penalty is either A, $50, B, half the maximum fine to which a person not previously convicted is liable on summary conviction of that offense, whichever is less, or C, that such fine as the minister prescribes not exceeding half the maximum amount of that fine to which a person not previously convicted is liable on summary conviction for that offense. Most people are familiar with the $50 because usually when you get a ticket, as we would say, for a traffic violation, the traffic wardens would issue the ticket. and you are more familiar with perhaps the $50. If you end up going before the courts, then sections 12110B and C tend to be the ones that are then enforced given the circumstances by the magistrate. The section goes on at 10A to deal with public service vehicles. And it is no mystery that when I read this section, many of you will ask, well, why has it taken this long for us to even address this section, given what we consider in many cases to be reckless behavior by some on our roads? But again, this is a continuum, and you will note that we have continuously tried to address a long-standing problem regarding reckless behavior on our roads by a number of persons, and I would say a small number of persons who drive public service vehicles. And this section basically allows for the courts to impose either of those fixed penalties that I mentioned previously, where a person is carrying up to 5 passengers in excess of the authorized number, the fine would be $25. Where the persons are carrying 6 or more passengers in addition to the $25 charge, they would then be charged $25 for each passenger then in excess of the 5 passengers, up to a maximum of 10 passengers in excess of the 5. I think it is fair to say that what currently exists in law in relation to that, because we all know, we've all been students, we've caught vans, we've seen the minibuses along the road, we've seen the excess passengers being piled into vehicles, particularly sometimes to take our school children to and fro. And we are well aware that the system itself currently in its present form does not necessarily support the ability to be able to record those offenses and to be able to ticket the drivers of those vehicles in compliance with this law. So many of you will ask yourselves, well, have these tickets even been issued over the course of the last few years, and in what quantum have they actually been issued? Well, this is one of the things that we are seeking to address today. When you look at 10B, it provided that there would be a $50 penalty, for instance, applied where persons exceeded the speed limit. At 10B2, the current legislation provides that the fixed penalty for exceeding the speed limit by up to 20 kilometers per hour is $75. Now again, I think it would be fair to say that not only are these fines low, but oftentimes when you are ticketed, because as I said earlier, it takes so long for these matters to get before the court and for them to be disposed of, you have many situations where people complain that, you know, an offense taking place today for going above the speed limit. The matter has taken, you know, almost a decade before it has actually reared its head in the court of law, or before they even see the summons. We also have a situation where people feel that they can make a call to dispose of matters, and sometimes perhaps matters go away. I'm not here to speak to that, but to say that these are the realities of life. And I think that we have to, as we improve the operations and modernize systems, we have to bring an end to that reliance where you can call somebody and something simply goes away. And therefore, I think where there's certainty in law, when an offense is committed, where there is an opportunity for the public to be able to pay for that penalty when it is imposed quickly so that it can be disposed of, is certainly the correct way for a society that is now more developed than it was back in the 1980s, that is the way that we should be developing our legislation to make sure that you can't call a friend, you can't call nobody to be able to ask for anything to be disposed of. One of the things that has motivated the changes that I am speaking of today is that the public outcry cannot be ignored. I think we have heard repeatedly at whether it is our Parish Speaks or engagement with our constituents in every forum, we have heard the public outcry for us as a government to simplify processes, to make things easier, whether in terms of business or in terms of just systems in our country, to be able to make life a bit easier for Barbadians. We recognize that in the existing legislation as well, that a number of the offenses that exist, and I think there are probably about 16 or 17 offenses, that these offenses do not accurately reflect the concerns that Barbadians have. It also does not accurately reflect the legal changes that have been made over the course of the last few decades in relation to other amendments to the road traffic legislation and to other ancillary pieces of legislation as well. And it therefore means that when we look at what currently exists, if we are beginning the modernization of our court system or licensing authority, then equally we must look at how do we adequately reflect the changes in thought of Barbadians about what should carry a greater penalty, what offenses should now be included because of behaviors that have crept into our society, to make sure that we capture people who are repeat offenders, and in some cases they have become great offenders at being able to do things that many of us frown upon from day to day. We also cannot ignore the fact that any penalty regime must also be commensurate with the type and the seriousness of the offense. And that is why I speak to the fact that we listen as a government and we recognize that there are some offenses that the public repeatedly speaks to as areas of concern for them. And I don't think that we can, given that we listen often to what is said in these various forums, that we can put ourselves in a position where we continue to ignore that there are legitimate concerns by the public. We cannot also ignore that the court process is lengthy. As I said before, that we are losing valuable time of the citizens, that the use of the court as we start to modernize even more, that we want to make sure that it is not a place of frustration, but rather that it is a place where we can settle matters in a timely manner, that there's some level of certainty when you go before the courts as to what to expect. Or in some cases, simply as we seek to do here today, that we make sure that for several offenses which are being committed and for violations that are taking place on a day-to-day basis, that we give the public the option to be able to pay those offenses quickly, to dispose of those matters quickly. We also cannot ignore the fact that many of the matters are old, that many of the files are old, that we're asking officers in various departments of the court to rummage through very old files that, again, before the introduction of the technology as we know it today, that many of these systems were paper-based, and that they find themselves in a situation where many of the files are dated, they have gotten damp because of the conditions in which sometimes they are stored, and it creates a problem for us from an environmental perspective, having to ask people to go to deal with files that are certainly dated and certainly in a condition that may create some respiratory issues. It therefore means if we can, going forward, have a system that is quick and nimble to be able to allow people to pay quickly, to be able to reduce the waiting times, that we are actually addressing some of the underlying issues that the public and certainly our officers in government have been drawing to our attention. And then perhaps the other thing that we cannot ignore that has brought us to this point by virtue of this amendment is technology by way of ticketing. I think as I did my research, almost in every Caribbean territory, you see attempts being made to modernize their fixed penalty system, to introduce fixed penalties for a number of offenses. In some cases, it is traffic offenses, as we're doing here today. In some cases, it is modernizing for the offenses of littering. In some cases, it is ticketing for issues related to consumer protection. But in every instance, what you see as the trend across the Caribbean in particular is that fixed penalties have been on the statute books for decades. But in many cases, just like we are having to do today, there has not been the attention paid to it to modernize and to upgrade not only the offenses, but also the penalties associated with the fixed penalty regime. And so what we do here today is really, as I said, intended to be able to make and to bring improvements to a system that has become outdated and irrelevant, while at the same time taking into account that this is but one phase of the modernization that all of us would want to see across the entire system. So one of the things that we have done by this legislation today is that when we look at the offenses, I can say to you that we have already prepared the order by way of a draft, and it is a draft that will go to Cabinet on Thursday. We have had the opportunity working with the Honourable Member for St. Joseph, who is also the Attorney General, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, officers in MTW, the Ministry, the Public Works Ministry covering licensing generally as well. We've also met with the Transport Authority, Transport Board. We have had all of our representative stakeholders engage in a discussion as it relates to not only the offenses that need to be included going forward, but also the level of penalties, and certainly a long discourse, a lengthy discourse as it relates to rethinking and relooking at the type of penalties and the message that we really want to send. So I can assure you that while we don't lay the actual order here today, that in the same vein as we have done with other pieces of legislation, the Health Services Regulation and others, that the intention will be that once this clears the order, the draft order goes before Cabinet on Thursday, and we then have our own ventilation at the level of Cabinet, that it is our intention, once it is approved, to circulate that to the general public so that they're aware of the new regime, but also what the associated penalties will also be as well. And I therefore look forward to us being able to do the usual communication to make sure that the public is fully apprised of what we are doing, and to be able to have the appropriate communication plan with the relevant authorities, allow us to break down these things. It is not complicated. We know what the existing law is. We know where we are coming from, but we also know that any modern society has to take certain steps to be able to evolve and to bring itself within the 21st century as well. That brings me to a discussion of the fact that this legislation will also now allow the minister to make the order. And I think that is particularly important because rather than, the law allows for us to make the order, the problem is that we've not been making the order for some time. And it also allows us now to do it by negative resolution, which again is consistent with the other pieces of legislation, which allows us not to have to keep coming back to Parliament to be able to have to make amendments to the penalty regime, and allows us to evolve as the public discourse on a lot of these matters obviously require us to make the relevant changes. It therefore brings me to a discussion certainly on further strengthening of this regime, because fixed penalties has a direct correlation to demerit points. I've heard, I believe it was in the Christchurch Parish Speaks, a very well-known gentleman raised the issue about demerit points, and at that meeting I recall drawing to the public's attention that demerit points actually exist on our statute books. What has been the challenge is that there was a period where the merit points were actually utilized within the law courts. And for a number of reasons, we found ourselves in a situation where there was a halt to the imposition of demerit points. And quite simply, in addition to fixed penalties, you have a regime which also, by the current law, allows for the courts, through the magistrate, to be able to impose points on offenders. And those points would accumulate. Different offenses carry different points. And as happens in the United Kingdom and other territories, when you reach a certain number of points, your license is either suspended or it is actually taken away completely. Now, we went through a period of utilizing that process. I believe there may have been many challenges because of the paperwork and not having certain things in order. And again, we have been in negotiations and consultation with the various stakeholders to make sure that we bring the necessary reform to the demerit point system. We have the draft papers in relation to what is required from licensing end, what is going to be required from the court systems end to make sure that we create a system, and it's not about reinventing the wheel, because again, the merit point system is throughout the Caribbean, it's throughout the international community, and it allows for people to know when they commit an offense or commit several offenses that there are consequences beyond simply just a fine. That if you continue to be a habitual offender, that you run the risk of having your license taken away or being disqualified for a period of time from driving. It also provides a regime that we are looking at where, for instance, new drivers may have a different regime brought in for them, because if they offend in a period of time close to when they've gotten the license, there may be some concerns regarding their ability to remain on the road for a particular period of time, or that they may have to retest. Before we bring the demerit points amendments, one of the things that is important is that we have to get the regime correct. Because I believe that when you look at the demerit point system as it currently exists, you will recognize that, again, a number of the offenses that ought to be included have actually not been included in the current demerit point system. And therefore, it means for judges that, and the persons in the magistrates, that they have not been able to capture offenders in certainly the way that I'm sure they would want to be able to impose the penalties that are necessary. So put simply, we have a lot of people who go before the courts who a fine may be imposed on them, but that should also come with a commensurate demerit point for the offense which they have committed. It is not now existing, and what we will be seeking to do very shortly is to bring that regime to make sure that people are also captured in that net, that they do not continue to offend and offend and offend in a situation where we ought to give them a warning so that they are aware that their behavior on our roads in this country are unacceptable. And that is another part of the fixed penalty system that I want to assure the country today that we have reflected on. We have been in long discussions as well with the stakeholders to make sure that we get this right. We are drawing on the region, we are drawing internationally to make sure that we are able to update our existing laws in relation to the demerit point system. I would not be able, Mr. Speaker, to speak about modernization, perhaps without being able to give out go a little wider in terms of some of the concerns, because while we seek to do this today, there's a reality that across the licensing system, everything that is governed by the Road Traffic Act, that we have had our challenges. And we have had our challenges over time, but it has not left us in a situation where we have not sought to improve. This administration has had some challenges recently, for instance, in relation to the licensing authority. And we have dealt with them frontally because we have had equipment that basically shut down. And I think all of us who have had, whether computers or any form of technology from time to time, knows that with all the best will in the world, with all of the attempts to be able to make sure that we can ensure that our systems are fully functioning, sometimes things happen that are simply beyond the control of our technical teams. And regrettably, at Licensing Authority, we had one such situation which impacted on vehicle registration, which again goes to the heart and core of ordinary Barbadians trying to get their vehicles registered, trying to get their PSVs registered, trying to get their trucks registered, trying to get simply on the road with their vehicles. We have been working towards a new driver's license management system. And in the process of transitioning to that as well, we've had a few challenges, but we are at a point now where the future looks bright in terms of being able to do appointments online for people who are seeking to do driver's licenses applications. As many of you are aware, I say to my staff that the process of obtaining a driver's license has not changed much since certainly I was at the age of 18, and I would have gotten my license so long ago. And even the way in which the licensing authority's yard is structured. I often say to them that I feel as though we have been trying to fail people before they even get onto the main road. And we have been looking at how to restructure even the yard at licensing, how to decentralize services in other locations so that we don't have a bottleneck at the Pine location. We have started by way of doing the customer care center at the licensing authority, which is next door to the Barbados Revenue Authority. And I know that sometimes there's always a confusion as to what services are offered by the Barbados Licensing Authority versus the Barbados Revenue Authority. But put simply, the Revenue Authority collects money. They have had to perform a number of the functions of licensing over the last few years, but licensing has also started to take back some of those functions and allow the Barbados Revenue Authority to be able to collect revenue. Sometimes what happens is that the system at Revenue Authority goes down. Sometimes what happens is that the system at licensing goes down, and that creates the frustration. And that is why we've been working to be able to merge the systems to make sure that we do not have the level of frustration that is taking place in the country as it relates to vehicle registration. We have, since the challenges we experienced a few weeks ago, we have brought on a number of staff, and the reality is that when we bring in additional hands to help the existing staff do the work, one of the biggest issues is that they have to be trained. Now, we don't have the luxury at licensing where we can stop operations completely and go and train people. We don't have the luxury of being able, apart from doing overtime, which that is something on the table as well, where the same staff that the public is interfacing with are then expected to be able to work the long hours, to come in on the weekends, and to train the staff that we have brought in. And I want to say today that these things do take time. It is regrettable that we find ourselves in a situation where we have had the interruption of business at the level that we've had at licensing. But my team at the licensing authority, and certainly our developers outside of Barbados, along with MIST as well, have been working through the night, through the day, to be able to improve the system and to be able to get us back on track at the licensing authority. We've been able to reduce the backlog significantly, and my hope is that with the additional staff that we have brought on, once they are trained up, we will be in a position to be able to have those numbers further significantly reduced as well. It is a case right now of the workload versus the manpower, and until we are in a position to get the manpower up to the level that we need it to be, obviously we are going to continue to have a bit of delays and stuff at the licensing authority. We have also, in the process of this challenge, and it was on the cards for a little while, but we've approved some additional garages to be able to take the pressure off of licensing, so that we can get them to be able to do the registrations. I think there's one more tweak that has to be made to have that fully operational, but that was in recognition of the fact that the load that has been being placed on the licensing authority, particularly with the increasing number of vehicles in this country, has placed an unnecessary burden on the staff of licensing, and we needed to be able to decentralize, in some cases, those functions which are possibly able to be done by other parties, with the oversight taking place by the licensing authority. We have also explored the possibility to help with the backlog at licensing, the reopening of the office at Oistins, and the Chief Licensing Officer, the PS, and others have been engaging with the Ministry of Housing, who has responsibility for that particular location, to be able to allow us to expand the services there and to get things up and running. So, Mr. Speaker, I know that the challenges have been many in the past few weeks that has caused that level of disruption, but just like we're doing here today with fixed penalties, and that what we have to come in the future in relation to demerit points to be able to improve the regime under which we are able to deliver our services under the Road Traffic Act, and certainly in the Magistrates Court. our intention is to continue to modernize. Modernization and transformation does not, Mr. Speaker, happen overnight. In many cases, we are changing behavior, we are changing systems, we are changing attitudes, we are simply changing locations in terms of how we do business. And therefore, you have already seen improvements in many aspects of how we govern, but these are areas that require not only resources, but in many cases, they take a bit more time because we are making a transition and we have to train people in order to be able to deliver on the services that are being provided. So we feel the frustration, we know the frustration, and as a government, that is why we are committed with the necessary resources to being able to out some of these fires that have been long-standing. I often say to people that the licensing authority in particular has been treated as an outside child, and that was even from the days of perhaps sometimes the selection of people who lead organizations presents its own challenges because leadership does matter. We have sought to rectify those issues, and I believe that we are on the right trajectory as we move forward with certainly a lot more integration of our staff and an involvement of our staff being able to lift the morale of the staff at the licensing because they do a job which requires them to be able to be level-headed at all times to ensure that their engagement with the public is one that service delivery is always at the forefront of their minds and certainly in terms of what we expect from them. So yes, we have had our challenges, Mr. Speaker, but consistent rather with how we are dealing with all aspects of governance, we intend to make sure that this is no different. As it relates to safety issues, we continue to embark on our programs to remark our roads, to make sure that our roads are safe. I will not expand this debate, Mr. Speaker, so you do not have to worry about me talking about my roads, my record, and the record of MTW speaks for itself. We have pothole patchers. I know the Honourable Leader of the Opposition likes to talk about potholes. Perhaps he has followed in the steps of his predecessor in the belief that potholes are transient inconveniences. This administration does not take that view. And while we accept that work had not been done for the years, the decade prior to us, we came to office and we've embarked on an ambitious program to make sure that we deliver on years of not having roadworks done in this country. And not just roadworks, sir. We have also embarked on making sure that our bridges are made safer, that we don't ignore studies of 1984 that told us that our bridges were deteriorating. So when we hear the cries from the other side, Mr. Speaker, of deteriorating infrastructure, I say to you that they must fall on deaf ears. Because if they did not do the work that was necessary when they had the opportunity to do it, I give you the assurance that this administration has not faltered in its responsibility, step by step, day by day, minister after minister, to make sure that we are able to make wrong things right. And I hope that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and Member for Christchurch South takes those notes because those are the facts, sir. And no matter how attempts are made to distort facts, every single Barbadian in this country knows that roadworks are ongoing. They may not, as with everything, sir, everything may not move at the pace that people will like. But we have made sure that we have been able to deliver on a process of transformation and modernization of roads in this country. I have 6 pothole patchers coming to this country as we promised and as we will deliver later this month. We train our staff and we get them on the road while they are training to be able to start to deliver on the potholes that are in the country. But potholes are also a result, sir, of climate change. And there are things that are beyond the control, in many cases, of this administration. And we seek to make sure that we are able to accelerate our programs to make sure that our roads are safe, that our court system works, that our bridges are safe, that our licensing authority is improved, that all the things that the Road Traffic Act is intended to be able to encompass that as a ministry, that we are working step by step to be able to deliver on those various things. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend this bill to this House and to ask this chamber to support the relevant amendments. It's not a debate that I believe will be lengthy, but I think it is one that is important because all of us are affected in one way or the other as we interchange and have discussions with our constituents regarding the Road Traffic Act from time to time, and certainly as we discuss the frustrations that people experience as they interface with the court system, and certainly we want to make sure that our citizens' time in relation to productivity is certainly reduced and brought to a bare minimum. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I therefore beg to move that this bill do not pass. And that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. The Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast closed their presentation by observing that I take notes. And the Honourable Member is so correct. I have taken notes. As a part of my duty to this Parliament and the Republic of Barbados, to follow debates very closely and to respond to what has been offered by way of legislation, in this case, amendment to long-standing legislation, and to explain to the public where we are in terms of the law, in terms of policy, in terms generally of legislation. I would not want to characterize the closing portion of the Honourable Member's speech by saying that she proceeded to quarrel with me for making these notes or for anticipating my not so much objection to the amendment, but seeking clarity to matters that arise. I want today to not merely to render opposition, but to offer prescriptions in relation to the Road Traffic Act, in relation to the regime of offenses that are created under the Road Traffic Act. And I will not disappoint the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East by beginning with a quote from her presentation when the Honourable Member said, "We have had no amendment to this legislation for a long time." Now, unless my memory is failing me, I thought that this government amended the Road Traffic Act last year, but as I always concede, I have the right to be wrong. The public will know.
Mrs. If I can.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member is misleading the House. I spoke to the amendments that we have made to the Road Traffic Act over the years and indicated that it is a piece of legislation that has often been tinkered with because it reflects issues of road safety. So I don't know what you were listening to or who you were listening to, but I was very clear to say that it has been tinkered with over the last few years. And I mentioned all of the various examples of where amendments have been made to the legislation. So I would ask for that comment to be struck from the record, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I do have the right to be wrong. And I did not hear the portion when the Honourable Member used the word tinkering. So that if this morning's amendment is characterized as tinkering, that is a confession from the government that it is not merely in the business of amending, but that it tinkers. Here it's a tinkering government, not a thinking government, but a government that now is in the business of tinkering. That is not a compliment for oneself, by the way. But let us press on Your Honor. And I was about to ask the Honourable Minister, this is going to be my approach today. I'm going to be asking a number of questions of the Honourable Member, who I hope will not take offence at the opportunity to further explain what has come to this Parliament today. And the public now will want to know, in an age of tinkering, what has happened to the tint legislation. Has that been abandoned? Is it still the sword of Damocles hovering over the head of the traveling public? And certainly young women who are seeking to secure privacy and protection in their vehicles, that they can drive around this country reasonably well concealed against potential predators. They want to know if they are still going to be criminalized by this government for concealing themselves, for protecting themselves in their vehicles as they drive past potential predators. So the question is a simple question. What has happened to the tint legislation? Is it still the sword of Damocles hanging over the head of the young women in this country who drive around feeling the protection not only from the rays of the sun, but from potential predators? What has happened to that legislation? Are we going to describe it with the government as mere tinkering with the Road Traffic Act? Where is it? What has happened to it? Or is the government afraid now to implement it on the cusp of an election which they also threaten? This is my approach today, sir. Simple, straightforward approach. I beg the engagement of the Honourable Member. I do not object to the points of order. I invite it. I invite it. And my purpose here today is to give some assurance to this public, to our public, as to what is this government's present position on the tint legislation. It has been discussed for over a year. It is an amendment to the Road Traffic Act. We await. It was promised in the early portion of 2025. It was postponed until mid-2025. It was further postponed to December 2025. I understand that a few motorists have been stopped by police officers and inquiries have been made as to the grade of tint on their windows. The public needs to know. The public needs to know if that $500 can go to the supermarket to purchase groceries or whether it will be paid to an administration which by its own admission wants money. And they don't only want money from the lending agencies overseas, but they want money from the people in Barbados. So if this government now today admits to tinkering with the Road Traffic Act, let us hear the extent of that tinkering. And I'm not being hostile. My voice may have been raised, but we want to know, we the public want to know the extent of government's tinkering. And before the day ends, I want the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East to rise from her seat and tell the people of Barbados what this government intends to do in relation to its tinkering with the Road Traffic Act insofar as the tint legislation is concerned. I really did expect that this morning's tinkering would have been done by the Honourable Member for St. Joseph, to whom the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East referred, but of course, there's a term called lame duck, and he is now a lame duck Attorney General, so one is not surprised that he is silent today. Expect to be whispering to the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East. He has been rendered quiet. That's a point of order, sir.
Honourable, this 2026, continue.
He's interrupted me.
Honourable,
He starts off the year as he ended.
Honourable Member, please continue.
He's a lame duck.
Honourable Member,
He's a lame duck.
please speak to the legislation, please, sir.
So I think I've spoken enough on the tint. And I'm going to force this Honourable Minister, as she sits next to a lame duck Attorney General, to say to tell this country what is the government's position in relation to tint. The public is nervous.
Honourable Member, you have said that 15 times also.
Thank you, sir.
Please move
After
on.
the
sir.
interruption from the
Honourable Member,
Attorney General.
Honourable Member, please move on. You spoke about 10 or continue.
Yes. It was only after the interruption from the lame duck Attorney General that I felt.
Honourable Member, please continue as it relates to the legislation, please.
And so the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East has told this Parliament today that this is a matter relating to fixed penalties. And now they spent much of last year trying to circumscribe my freedom of speech in here. They spent much of last year with that. Everything I said, oh, they got up the point, the standing orders, relevance. Well, I am promising you today, sir, that every reference that has been made by the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East, every particular reference, I am reserving the right in here today to respond to it in particular. Now, the Honourable Member said that she has 6 road patchers on the way to the island. I don't know if she's talking about human beings or machinery. And I'm going to respond to that by way of asking questions. And the Honourable Member spoke about fixing roads. Let me start there where the Honourable Member ended. We have pothole patchers, the Honourable Member says. And it is good that the Honourable Member, and it is good and kind and fair that the Honourable Member has introduced this into the debate, the question of road works. And it is relevant. And the people of Barbados, in the context of today's tinkering, I beg your pardon, in the context of today's amendment, want to know about the progress of the roadworks program. This is about the Road Traffic Act, and the Road Traffic Act pertains properly to the roads, and the Honourable Member was so correct to embrace the question of roadworks as part of this debate. We are so obliged to the Honourable Member for extending the debate to the question of roadworks. Here is how I quoted the Honourable Member. The Honourable Member accused the last administration in these terms. They did not do the work that was necessary when they had the opportunity. There opens the door to a debate as to the state of roadworks and the state of the roads in this country. And here I quote the Honourable Member saying again, potholes are a result of climate change. You don't like me to repeat, sir, but that needs repetition. That the Honourable Member has gotten up in this chamber today, first sitting of the year, first sitting of a new year, to say that potholes are a result of climate change. I hope that that makes the front page of tomorrow's paper, that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East is now attributing the bad state of the roads to climate change, and perhaps it has nothing to do with government's neglect of the infrastructure. This government has neglected the infrastructure. And I can say how this government is spending the money. I've said it often, and I'm not going to repeat it in here again today. But this government has misspent the people's money on luxuries, on governmental luxuries, when they ought to have been repairing the roads. A building, an unfinished building that cost $30 million ought not to have been constructed when that $30 million ought to have gone into the repair of roads, damaging the people's cars. People cannot maintain their cars properly in this country. People are spending millions of dollars in car parts for the car and the body, while this government fails and refuses to allocate resources properly to the maintenance of the road system. But here's the Honourable Minister coming in here today to say that potholes are a result of climate change. The discourse that I've heard in this Parliament over the last 7 years, whenever they spoke of climate change, they used to speak of Hurricane Elsa, 5,000 bolts of lightning, and COVID. The bad roadworks are attributed to that as well. What climate change? What? The state of the roads are as a result of governmental neglect. It has nothing to do with climate change. We've always had potholes in this country. That is admitted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable St. Michael's Office.
I have tried to restrain myself, I must tell you. And I have gone wide because I believe that I've come to public office to be as transparent as possible. And I will not let the Honourable Member for Christchurch South try to mislead this chamber by indicating that I have said that the potholes in this country are only attributed to climate change. Any Barbadian in this country, anybody who has been impacted by climate change, is well aware that the intensity of the rainfall in this country in the last few years has basically disrupted what we know to be the road infrastructure in our land. It is clear that we have seen slippage of magnitudes in districts that you would not have seen them before. You have seen roads basically broken as a result of the pounding of rain for long periods, protracted periods, with an intensity that we have never seen, sir. Mr. Speaker, those are the facts. And I regret that the Honourable Member, for a snap at a headline, would want to insinuate that I have said that the only reason for potholes in this country is as a result of climate change. It is not true, sir, and I would ask for it to be struck from the record. I understand his pain, Mr. Speaker, because when we speak on some of these subjects, I know that the Honourable Member finds it difficult to get up. No pun intended. But I ask, Mr. Speaker, sir, that he restrain himself, because whether it is on education, whether it is on transport, whether it is in relation to roads, the Honourable Member has no moral authority to stand in this chamber and accuse any member of saying things that they did not say. For that, Mr. Speaker, I am obliged, and I would ask that the comment be struck from the record.
I am for Christchurch South.
Rather long point of order. Rather long point of order. I don't see the point nor the order, but...
Honourable, please continue. I determine that, not you.
Yes. I repeat to all 13 of them here. I am going to repeat to all 13 of the government members here. A minority of the parliamentary government is in here today, and I'm going to repeat to all 13 of them and let the public know that there are 13 of them in here today, Your Honor. Where are the others, though? I won't reach the standing orders, but I want... Hey, you're coming.
Honourable, please continue as it relates to
No, I am
legislation.
going to let the public know that they are not in this parliament as often as they should be. Welcome, son. Welcome, son. Welcome. Empty vessel, I got something for you this year.
Honourable Member, please.
All right, son. My note says that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, he said potholes are a result of climate change, and I am inviting the newspapers to make that the headline tomorrow, that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, he said that potholes in this country are as a result of climate change. That cannot change now. Hansard has it, I have it, my notes are faithful. So that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East will have to explain the origin of potholes before climate change. But I would not belabor the point, sir. I will just go to another quote from the Honourable Member, who promises that roadworks are ongoing, and that if the point of order had not come, I was going to expand on this, that the Honourable Member has 6 pothole patchers on the way to Barbados. You know, after years of neglect, you suddenly decide to bring pothole patchers. People have been talking about this for a long time. The need for this nature of attention to roadworks. You drive all over Barbados and you see potholes, and you see deep potholes for months. And not to be contentious, but I'm going to invite the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East to drive along her constituency by the Pine, go down Graham Hall. This is on the ABC highway. When she arrives at the roundabout leading to Graham Hall, where the Honourable Member for St. Philip South used to work, you pass through that roundabout, there is a very, and this is by way of information, there's a very large pothole. It seems to have been dug, excavated, because it doesn't have the rugged edges. It is something, and I want, Honourable Member, through you, sir, I'm inviting the Honourable Member to fix this one, because a lot of cars are falling in there, and it is costing the government money because they go up to the licensing authority, the Ministry of Transport and Works, and receive their compensation. But that is one to which I draw the Honourable Member's attention. I hope she's listening. That is one that could be fixed even today. I know the government has now employed someone to traverse the country, identify potholes, they're fixed the following day, and then he comes back onto Facebook and applauds the government. So that let his employment now extend itself to that Graham Hall roundabout. And I see the Honourable Member making notes, and I know that she is making a note that that is one that will be fixed even before the sixth patch, what do they call it?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member is misleading the House. I'm actually making notes of the fact that the Honourable Member for Christchurch South has never raised an issue about any road pothole in Christchurch South while he was the sitting or has been the sitting MP. So I'm making a note to remind myself when the appropriate time comes on a platform that I will remind the country of that. Honourable Member, thank you.
Really a point of order, but the engagement is good because we are going to make progress. Look, when it comes to Christchurch South, sir. When it comes to Christchurch South, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West promised me within the first term of this government that he was going to fix the stretch from Bay Street up to Thornberry Hill. Along came the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East and said she is going to fix from Bay Street to the corner of Rendezvous. And Christchurch South was to be excluded. But I am only a voice.
Mr. Speaker, I believe we will be here till 3 o'clock at this rate.
I don't mind.
But I'm going to intervene. So I can assure you that you will rise and you will sit, and I will rise and sit, Mr. Speaker. I rise on a point of order. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West, during his tenure as Minister, would have indicated to the country that we had some improvements to be done on Highway 7. The condition that the last administration left this country in relation to its roads required us to be able to undergo some mill and pave programs because we could not get the designs done for Highway 7 in the time frame that the public was outcrying that it wanted the repairs done to the road. We have since completed the Highway 7 design, sir. But in the interim, what we have done is we have broken it into phases because unlike the previous administration, we make sure that we do things and that we protect the public purse by doing things in phases so that there is minimal disruption to the public of Barbados. So I want to give the assurance, Mr. Speaker, that we will be doing from Bay Street to Oistins, which I know the Honourable Member is unsettled whenever we say that we are doing anything in relation to Oistins, but we have already committed to doing it, and we will go to the area where we completed under mill and pave, which is the area of Thornberry Hill, Mr. Speaker.
The portion of roadworks within Christchurch South, that's not a point of order, by the way, but I can't take over your
Honourable
job.
Member determined that you have no say in it at all. That is outside your purview and authority.
If truth be told, and truth will be told from this side, they decided to fix the portion of Highway 7 only when a certain person received the blessing of candidature for the Barbados Labour Party. They felt that the reward to that gentle soul was to fix a part of the road after I assumed the location in which I stand today. In other words, after I left them, so happily too, they decided that the Christchurch South portion of Highway 7 was worthy of repair, and that is a fact. And today I want to thank the Honourable Member for Christchurch West for his efforts and his promises to have the entire, I know I'm embarrassing him, but to have the entire stretch of Highway 7 done. He told me, the Honourable Member told me in here and elsewhere that he intended to do subterranean works. In other words, the utility companies would come. He's always so gentle when he's embarrassed and blushing. And he's blushing again today. He will not interrupt me with any point of order. He promised me faithfully that those road works were going to be done. And that subterranean work need to be done by the utility companies, and he was proceeding with that. They took him out of the ministry. I wouldn't say they fired him, because a lot of firing goes on around here. Some people are so unfortunate they get fired twice.
Honourable, that has anything to do with the debate, Honourable?
The two firings?
Yes, please continue.
You don't know who got fired twice?
No, I asked if that has anything to do with the
road works.
The amendment.
We're dealing with road works.
That has something to do with the amendment, Honourable Member?
The firings? No.
But please, we resort to them. Please.
In any event, sir, let us resolve. We wouldn't contend on that any further, and I'm inviting engagement from the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East. We look forward to the arrival at Grantley Adams Airport of these 6 pothole patchers. When they come, we really look forward to it. So that contains the admission that the government has been unable to fix potholes because there are no patchers in this country. But let us arrive at more substantive issues. I think the government may be conceding and surrendering that there has been neglect of that infrastructure. There's that concession, because if you admit that you are now bringing pothole patchers on the cusp of an election as comfort to the people of Barbados, that contains an admission that you have neglected to do the work prior here too. Now, the Honourable Member would again not attempt to circumscribe my speech, as was done for the whole of last year by her colleagues, but the Honourable Member went on to say that concerning the PSVs, there's recklessness. I am going to ask you, Mr. Speaker, to allow me freedom of speech in here, not to circumscribe what I come here to say, to respond directly to statements made by any member who speaks. And today there are 13 of them, and I am going to address you, all 13 of them today. First day of the year, 13. I'm going to address all of them through you today, sir. You want a point of order on the fact that 13 present?
Honourable Member, please continue. Honourable Member, please. This is 2026.
Mm-hmm. And if the Honourable Member speaks of the PSVs, that gives me the right to speak of a different category of public service vehicle, the Transport Board. The Honourable Member speaks of recklessness among the PSVs. Therefore, one comes to the conclusion that this government has assigned to itself the responsibility to resolve the question of recklessness among the PSVs. I will ask the Honourable Member, who I invite to answer immediately by point of order, what is happening to the other public service vehicle known as the Transport Board? That is a public service vehicle. Unless the Honourable Member or any of the 13 present wish to object to me asking this question, permit me, Your Honour, to ask it. That after 70 years of rendering public service to this country, a public service vehicle department called the Transport Board is about to be closed. And the people who live in the far-flung areas of Barbados, including St. Joseph, which is represented by a lame duck Attorney General, will be deprived of the opportunity to travel between St. Joseph and Bridgetown and back at subsidized bus fares. That is a public service vehicle. The people of Barbados want an explanation. The people of Barbados are entitled to an explanation because this government boasted last week that 35 new public service vehicles arrived from China. What will become of them? We're on the issue of public service vehicles, I beg your pardon, and the Transport Board is a public service vehicle department. Now, one heard the minister saying last week that in relation to the divestment of that public service vehicle department, they had to speak to the stakeholders. Now, something is not adding up. The cabinet, as far as we're told, made a decision for the divestment of the Transport Board. The titular head, and I don't mean to disparage, the former General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union confirmed what government was reluctant to admit to when the rumor first hit the social media by way of a WhatsApp or something. You know, it came out through the WhatsApp first, before the government confessed. And then Sir Roy Trotman, the distinguished trade unionist, Sir Roy Trotman, made public, yes, this thing had been agreed to, that the Barbados Workers Union had had discussions with the government, and it was final. The divestment was agreed to, and cabinet agreed to the divestment. And this was sometime within the final quarter of last year. Along comes the Honourable Member for St. Michael's Southeast a few days ago in December and says to the public that they still have to talk to the stakeholders. Who are these stakeholders? What are these stakeholders? I thought you would have had those discussions prior to the cabinet decision, the final cabinet decision to close the Transport Board. But you wish to appease an angry public, the public that is angry at the divestment. The little old lady who wants to come to town and get her pension at 11 o'clock and go back home at 2, paying $3.50 each way, she now lives in fear that she will have to take an Uber taxi that they brought into this country to raise travel fares. By divesting the Transport Board, and I'm going to avoid the big word, by closing it down after 70 years of loyal service to this country. And the Honourable Member for St. Michael's Southeast said within the last 2 weeks that they still have to talk to stakeholders. That is why I say that this government does not fully disclose to the people of Barbados. I am saying that based on information, based on prior confession, this government said a final decision had been made in relation to the closure of the Transport Board, the permanent closure of the Transport Board. I believe that is what divestment meant in those circumstances. But last week, the Honourable Member for St. Michael's Southeast tells the country that it is not closed, that they still have to talk to stakeholders. Who are these stakeholders? Are the stakeholders the people for whom those electric buses are destined? Because you can't sell an electric bus to a former bus driver to do what with? To spend half the day charging it and the other half making 2 trips? Who are those buses for? That is what the public has been whispering about over the last 2 weeks.
Honourable Member for St. Michael's Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just waiting for the appropriate time because I was hoping that the Honourable Member would get back to where perhaps he wants to get to, but he's taken a very long time to be able to develop his point. The Honourable Member is misleading this chamber, and he is seeking to mislead the public while so doing as well, Mr. Speaker. The issue of divestment has been known as a policy of this administration for a long time. It is unfortunate that the other administration, of which the Honourable Member for Christchurch South now leads, has never really taken a position on the Transport Board, one way or the other. We've indicated from the outset that divestment also comes with a level of enfranchisement of the workers. And while the honourable member would want those who are listening to believe that the only interest that this country has and this government has is in closing the transport board, I would ask him to read the cabinet decision, because it not only speaks to the divestment, but it also spoke to enfranchisement, an enfranchisement model of which his administration has never collided with, Mr. Speaker, but one which the Barbados Labour Party has been founded on, one which it will continue to believe in, and one which it will continue to execute in relation to improving and modernizing this economy. And therefore, I would ask for the comments to be struck from the record, because what he has said is misleading. We have made a cabinet decision to allow for discussions with our stakeholders to take place. And that discussion and those discussions are ongoing. I have said it last week when we brought the 35 buses to this country with the transport board drivers driving them out to the Weymouth headquarters. I repeated the fact that we have no intention to stop the little old lady with her bags from being able to get to and fro. And to the people of St. John as well, who he seeks to represent, we got them covered as well. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the school children are also in the net to be covered also. So I would not want the honourable member to continue on his current trajectory, misleading this chamber, misleading himself, and misleading the people of this country as it relates to the transport board and the future of the transport board and his workers. We have that covered, sir. Thank you.
And the honourable member is telling the people of this country that they are going to enfranchise bus drivers by giving them some buses. Like how they enfranchise the agricultural workers in the sugar industry with the co-op arrangement, which has stalled, and now the honourable member for St. Philip South has to tell the people of Barbados if we're going to have a sugarcane industry in this country next year or the year after, because the co-op negotiation has fallen flat. They came in here 2 years ago. I sat in here, and they boasted to thunderous applause that the workers in the sugar industry are now going to own the plantations and to own the industry. What is the position today? Nothing, nil. And the same thing is going to happen with the transport board. All these big empty promises, bigger than the transport board buses that they just brought in from China. Big empty promises, and nothing will happen. Will any bus driver receive any of those electric buses? They cannot run efficiently unless they're bringing tourists from the harbor to take them up Bay Street to bathe in the sea and to go back to the ship. Let the government explain this. Don't let the government come in here with a lot of pretty talk. They had a lot of pretty talk in relation to the co-op negotiations. That has failed. I came in here today in peace, Your Honor. At the start of the year, I came in here in peace. I can leave in pieces. All right. All right. Well, tell the people of Barbados who those 35 buses will go to after the divestment. Who will they go to? You have the chance today to tell the bus drivers up on Robert Street who are waiting. Those are the stakeholders that you need to be talking to. You went to the cabinet, you being the government, went to cabinet and agreed to divest without proper communication with those drivers. The drivers don't know what they're going to get apart from severance pay. Of course, this government's record on severance pay is so bad that there are some people from the rural development who are to receive severance pay, and this government is refusing to pay them. I say that only as evidence of this government's record in relation to paying entitlements to people. Some people who used to work at rural, they sent them home, and they're refusing to give them severance pay. But let me not digress, sir. I close that portion of the discussion by saying that the people of this country need to hear what is this government's position on the transport board. Not only the bus drivers who are being tricked, but the public that is being fooled. And I am going to say now to the public of Barbados, what is the plan? And ultimately the plan is in the hands of the people of Barbados. This government's plan after the next election, if they succeed, and nobody knows the result of that election, but they are delaying it, not the election, They are delaying the divestment plan until after the election because they have no good news for the drivers nor the commuters of this country. If the people in Barbados re-elect this government, the transport board will disappear from the landscape of Barbados. Low bus fares will be a thing permanently of the past if this government is re-elected to office. Challenge me on that. And the bus drivers will be left like the workers in agriculture who are out to sea. No co-op arrangement. Everything has fallen apart. There is no proper co-op arrangement in relation to the sugar industry. The same thing is about to happen to the bus drivers at the transport board. If this government is re-elected, I want the people of Barbados to know that there is a connection between government's plans and the next election. You cannot disjoin the political from the economic/commercial. This government has a plan to abandon the workers of the transport board, and they are delaying that abandonment only for an election. Let the people of Barbados know this. Let the bus drivers know this. Let the commuters know this. Let the general population of Barbados know that the sword of Damocles will swing with this government after the next election if they are elected. If they are elected, the people of Barbados will make that decision based on truth. The people of Barbados will make that decision based on what is logical. Why do you announce the divestment at the end of last year? Why does the cabinet make a final decision? Why cannot this government tell the people a date, at least a date, not an election date, a date for the final divestment, a date for the final alienation of that stock of buses from the transport board to whomsoever come that they intend to please. It will not be a bus driver. I've said before, I've said it already, I will say it again, and this Democratic Labour Party has said it publicly, that no bus driver at the transport board, nor two nor three of them, as a conglomerate, I beg your pardon, as a consortium, can efficiently run electric buses. They can't do it because the very transport board is not now managing to run them efficiently. As I've said before, half the day is spent charging them and the other half is running them inefficiently. They should have had diesel buses. We're ashamed to say that. They should have had diesel buses. And the only commercial entity that can efficiently and profitably run an electric bus is an entity that is moving towards once, twice, perhaps 4 times a day. A bus driver cannot run his commercial entity efficiently or profitably using an electric bus, and using an electric bus of that size. We all know this. We all know this. You don't have to be a government minister to know that. So that the people at the transport board are about to be hoodwinked by this government. They are being fooled, they're being misled. What is going to happen to those 35 buses? Government, all 13 of you who are here today, answer. I'm willing for the interruption. I think the dialectical exchange is progressing the larger discussion. We are learning things as we go along. And the bus drivers must now be at the position in which they feel that they're being hoodwinked. And I will say this to the government by way of good information and good education. It is a more profitable enterprise if the government, acting through the transport board, parts with those small diesel, those intermediate size, medium size, intermediate size buses. Those would be more profitable. Everybody knows a diesel vehicle leads to greater profit, not electric. So please, government, stop misleading the poor people in Barbados with foolishness. I am off that. I am off that, and I will now come to other aspects of government's plans. I will go to road traffic offenses. This is now my teaching moment with 6, 4, 10, 3, 13. All right. We now have, I'm going to address the 15 members of the government, Dick Stoops. I'm going to address the 15 members of the government that are now present. I am not breaching the standing orders by referring to the other half, whichever part of the world they are, let them luxuriate. But happily we have 15 here today, and I want to educate them as to this road traffic business. And this will be the non-contentious portion of my speech today. I want to recommend to the government a new regime of law relating to infractions arising from the use of vehicles on the road. You would have noticed, Your Honor, Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast, through you, you sounded like a de facto Attorney General today, and there's a good reason for that. And I commend you. I'm using the word infraction as opposed to offenses, because the word infraction connotes something less severe than offense. And I'm saying that you need, in looking at the Road Traffic Act, I suspect you won't get the chance to do it, but in looking at the Road Traffic Act, and not to tinker with it, but to give great overhaul to the Road Traffic Act and make a very sharp division between criminal offenses and civil/administrative offenses. You, Your Honor, will understand what I mean by that. Now, we spent many years in the courts. I'll give you an anecdote, sir, which will appeal to you in particular. One day I went to Bordet Hall Court, and I think it was call day. You remember that, sir? Sometimes you saw hundreds of citizens in the courtyard. They weren't there for murder or any of the more serious offenses. They were there for road traffic offenses. And among them was a gentleman called Mr. Wharton. You know him very well, sir. And I went over to Mr. Wharton and introduced myself, although I did not have the privilege of the Waterford experience. I went and said, Mr. Wharton, you have done too much for this country to be out here in this hot sun. I discovered that he was there for a road traffic offense. And I thought, apart from being an affront to the gentleman, like it was an affront to all of them, no discrimination, that Mr. Wharton should not have been standing there in the hot sun, waiting to appear before a magistrate for 2 minutes. But before the appearance for 2 minutes, you know, they used to put them in a stockade. They went in, the people charged with road traffic offenses went into the same dock as the main charge for murder. So from its very appearance, a road traffic offense or a road traffic offender was treated like a murderer. They went into the same dock, and you would remember, sir, it was a very hostile place because the dock, it had these spikes. You were surrounded by spikes, so that I suppose if they attempted to jump over, oh, he lame duck.
Member, please
What's
do
the
not.
lame duck saying, sir?
Member, do not repeat that phrase in here in relation to the Attorney General.
Which one?
You
Sir?
just use Liam that.
Which one?
Liam that, Honourable Member. Please continue.
Okay.
Honourable Member, please continue.
I shan't call him.
Honourable Member, please continue.
Look. I warn you, you know. I am warning you. All right.
Honourable Member, please continue as it relates to.
Take my warning here.
Honourable Member, please do not address another.
There are a lot of things I can say in here.
Honourable Member.
There are a lot of things I can say in here. Don't make me say them. And I can say them outside too. But I would say it in here first. All right. Behave yourself.
Honourable, I am the person who castigates. Honourable members
Well,
here.
tell him,
You do
tell
not
him.
possess that authority. You're out of place, honourable
I
member.
do not possess the authority, but maybe I possess the right to resist.
Yep, honourable
bad
member.
manners.
Honourable, please continue.
Thank you, sir. Warn him here, sir. Yes, so we were saying that there seemed to have been an equation between road traffic offenses and serious criminal offenses based on the treatment meted out to those respective persons. And one noted, even as a young lawyer, that there needed to be a regime change, that you should not treat people who were charged for dark tint, or coming out of a major stop when perhaps it was imprudent so to do. These minor traffic offenses. The point is, minor traffic offenses needed to have been classified firmly as non-criminal offenses. Indeed, I would not even use the word offenses in relation to them. That is why I chose the word, sir, infractions. A minor infraction against the road traffic laws. And we know, sir, that road traffic offenses are rooted in the criminal law. That Cap 295 of the laws of Barbados has been with us for a long, long time. And no Attorney General, whether
Honourable, continue, please.
Thank you, sir. I anticipated an interruption. No Attorney General has ever categorized them as being firmly separate one from the other. And my recommendation to the very active Honourable Member for St. Michael South East is to firmly, in the short time that is left, it is not impossible to do, in the very short time that is left, if the lady is not afraid,
Honourable, please continue.
no, let the laughter die down. They're tickling each other.
Honourable, please.
Yes, in the short time that is left, I invite the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East to firmly categorize road traffic infractions separate and apart from road traffic infractions which are genuinely criminal. Let the public understand what I mean. That causing death by dangerous driving, for example, driving under the influence of alcohol, drugs, those substances which impair judgment, that those are really and genuinely criminal offenses. Causing death by dangerous driving, they call it otherwise motor manslaughter. Those are genuinely criminal offenses. But when a man doesn't have two reflectors in place or a number plate that is probably not meeting with the standards under the road traffic rules or the Act, why do you criminalize him? I know that over the years, it has become transfigured. Those minor infractions have become transfigured in a way that they're called road traffic offenses as opposed to criminal offenses. But Mr. Wharton's experience, sir, would indicate to you that the courts, in a real sense, still treat road traffic offenders as criminals, and that's the point. And so I invite the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East, in a sober moment now, to firmly so categorize them. It is something that can easily be done. And not only firmly categorize them, but treat them like less than criminal offenses. No minor infraction against the Road Traffic Act should cause anybody to go into court. Why? Waste time? I've heard about the ticketing system around here for years and years, and this is no criticism of the incumbent, but if the incumbent doesn't fix it, it means that the incumbent joins those persons who have been derelict in their duty. And this government, through 7 years, has had the opportunity to implement a ticketing system. What's so difficult about that? What is so difficult about that? I repeat, no minor traffic offender should be standing up before a judge or a magistrate, well, a magistrate in this case, explaining behavior. When you could issue a ticket, the person pays it, and as is done in the other countries, if you oppose what the police officer or the traffic warden alleges, then you go and explain to a magistrate why you think you're so right. Not only do you save time, but clearly this is a government that needs money to travel. And if they need this money for a heavy travel bill, collect it through a ticketing system. That's easy to do. I don't see why people are still standing up. I don't know, sir, you're in those courts more often than I am. I don't know if there's still something called a call day, in which you assemble good citizens in the courtyard, sometimes 200 people waiting in the courtyard from 9:30 until 2:30, and sometimes it would extend to 3 o'clock because somebody in there saying he's not guilty. He's not guilty of having 2 reflectors of a different color, and he takes up an hour cross-examining policemen and humbugging magistrates with foolishness, when he could have received a ticket, and the other persons who came to confess to the offense would, the person who came to confess to the offense could easily be dispatched, so that the court system is held up by a system which needs to be overhauled. And I invite the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East, in the short time left for this government, to correct that. If the time is too short, well, I promise the people of this country that it will be done. It will be done, so that we recommend that new regime of offenses, of infractions. Your Honor, I don't think we need delay you, sir. I think this is the extent of the government's business. By the Honourable Member's own admission, this is a simple matter, although the Honourable Member says she's willing to spar with me for the whole day. I don't think the Honourable Member needs to spar with me for the whole day. If the Honourable Member now agrees that we need an entirely new and separate regime pertaining to road traffic offences, I think the Honourable Member, although she will not agree or she will not concede to answer in relation to the tint legislation, still the public wants to know. The public wants to know what to do with the tint. If they can breathe a little easier that it will not come, or if, like with the Transport Board, this government would have a plan to ambush them in the event of a successful election. And just as the plans are consistent with those of the Transport Board divestment, maybe, just maybe, this government plans to ambush the people of this country in the event of a successful re-election, to come at them and come at them hard. Third-term governments don't make any sport. They don't make any sport. This is a last lap. And the people of this country are afraid of last laps because they lap up everything. Anywhere that there's justice, they turn it into injustice. Anywhere that, well, I won't say that. I won't say that today, but a third term is a last lap.
Honourable, speak the legislation, please.
Yes, yes. And the legislation, sir, we would ask the government not to delay until after an election, whether they're elected or not. Nobody knows. To be frank, nobody knows. Based on performance, obviously one thinks that they would have a very hard time.
Honourable member, please speak to the legislation,
Yes.
please.
So we are coming to tint. Again, for emphasis, the people of this country are asking the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast, what is the status of tint? Is it intended to do it now? Is it intended to do it soon? Or is it intended to ambush the people of Barbados in the unlikely event that this government gets a last lap? And by the last lap, I mean a chance to mop up and permanently injure this country with maladministration. So, what has happened to the tint legislation? I think I have said more than I really ought to have done in relation to what is not anything road-shattering, pun intended, by the honourable member's own admission. What she has done here today is to merely tinker. A responsible government, though, does not tinker with legislation. You make serious and substantial amendment. But I am borrowing the honourable member's language, and on the next occasion that the Road Traffic Act is adjusted, it will be adjusted by way of serious amendment. And there shall be no tinkering with the legislation. The other aspect of the legislation, in closing, with which the public will be interested, is that this tinkering exercise here today, although it is tinkering by their admission, it may not be as innocent as is presented. Let the public understand that this legislation today concerns itself with penalties. Again, you are penalizing the public, and you're asking the public to pay fines. You see, every time this government comes to the public with what they claim is tinkering, they are really punishing the public. This is about establishing a regime of fixed fines. And a fixed fine is a serious thing, sir. And you, as a lawyer of some distinction, and you will permit me to say of much distinction, will want to say to the honourable member for St. Michael South East that the courts may well have spoken as to the constitutionality of fixed fines. That nothing, no statute ought to deprive a judicial officer of discretion. And when one sees the word fixed fines, as a lawyer, one makes contact with the principle that it is unconstitutional to deprive a judicial officer of his discretion. And that is what a fixed fine may do. And I caution the government as to the legality and constitutionality of any legislative initiative to impose fixed fines where the citizen may come to the court and argue that you are depriving the magistrate of judicial discretion. Courts in very high places have ruled that before. And so the government now is cautioned. We have left the political, we have left the government's neglect of the infrastructure, and we are now making contact with the government in terms of law and constitutionality. And we are saying to the government, as the honourable member receives the advice of the honourable member for St. Joseph, that she may want to revisit today's tinkering exercise. Fixed fines, I repeat, may collide with the constitutional prescription that you must not deprive a magistrate or judicial officer, including a judge, of discretionary treatment of a person who has come before the court. But all this could become moot if we go back to the original point. And what may save this legislation, what may save the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast from any legal embarrassment is if you place this into a regime of civil and or administrative infractions. I told you before, sir, that I'm not going to use the word offenses. All this can be placed within a regime of civil and or administrative infractions so that you can have fixed penalties. It is not a court. You go into the BRA or you go into the licensing authority that has become a disaster zone under, I think they have 3 ministers up there, or is it 2? 2? Yeah, I think I saw the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast giving a press briefing last week. I can't remember if there were 2 ministers, but anyhow, it doesn't matter. 2 or 3 ministers have really ruined the licensing authority, all kinds of things that happen out there. And this is not to reflect on the staff, because even the staff is complaining about the poor ministerial supervision and poor ministerial administration. And I know the government is very sensitive to criticism. I know the government wants the people of Barbados to feel that this is a perfect government. No country has ever had perfect government, and I know that is the reason for much of the abuse that is thrown this way in response to my criticism of the government. But I beg the government today to please accept the criticism and to please try to fix a governmental problem at the licensing authority. One goes to renew one's driver's license, for example, and at Whole Town, and this is a fact. I know the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast has not gone to Whole Town in many years, but on her next visit there, a morning at 7 o'clock, there are long lines around the licensing authority building waiting for the simple act of having a driver's license updated to say 2027 or 2028. That is happening under a ministry with 3 ministers. A ministry with 3 ministers, sir, cannot fix a local problem as simple as that. Why? And as I said, Your Honor, I am not blaming the people who work there, because even the people who work there and elsewhere under this ministry of 3 ministers, they are complaining about maladministration and possible incompetence in relation to the management of those ministries. It is not satisfactory to have 3 ministers preside over this maladministration. And again, sir, again, I beg the government, please accept the criticism. The public is complaining. It is a highly visible problem. Please emerge from that cocoon of complacency and self-righteousness and come out and face the public. The public wants the problem fixed. There are men taking their vehicles, and this is by way of information to the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast. Again, it is in the middle of her constituency, or at the edge. The headquarters of MTW are there in full sight of the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast, and there are long lines of cars and trucks in that ministry over the last few years. This is not perfect government. It is not, and I beg this government to stop taking such personal offense and political offense against the criticisms that the public is making against the government. The public wants these ministries, the public wants these departments to work efficiently. It is not fair for a man, particularly a self-employed man, to travel to the Pine at 6:30 in the morning and leave at 4:30 in the evening when the workers leave without attention to his vehicle. It is a real life human problem, and the Honourable Minister for Transport and Works must be made aware of these problems. I suspect the Honourable Member knows, and it is quite possible that the other two ministers in there will know, and that all three of them know what is being done to resolve that issue. What is being done? The public needs that assurance. Will it be done this month? Will it be done next month? The public wants a solution to it. And Your Honor, in a very real sense, it is not a political problem. It is political only insofar as politicians are causing the problem. But if it is administrative and the three ministers in there cannot get it fixed, stop interfering with the public service, bring in contract people, superseding long-standing public servants in this country, superseding them. It isn't only in the fire service and the prison service that the officers up there are getting treated very badly by political and ministerial interference of favoritism. Men in the prison service, 22 years, Your Honor.
Honourable member.
I know they can stop me.
No, Honourable member.
22 years.
Honourable, please speak to the legislation. Please.
Yes. I don't know if they're calling the election next week, so I can get
Honourable member, please speak to the legislation. If you talk about you will have elsewhere to parade if they call an election. Honourable member, you will have the opportunity if an election is called. Please, let us get the amendment.
Please pardon me, sir. Please pardon me for pushing the case for prison officers who are being...
Honourable member, please speak to the legislation, please.
Yes. And the fire service too.
Honourable member, this is the first sitting of 2026. You do not wish to be escorted out in the first sitting, do you? Do you wish to be escorted out, sir, by the marshal? Do you wish to be escorted out by the marshal, sir? Honourable member.
You know, Your Honor, I was not alone in my laughter.
Honourable member, please speak to your legislation.
Thank you very much, sir. And so we will close by reminding the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast that she's presiding over a ministry that is in chaos, a ministry that is suffering administrative collapse. And by the way, fortunately, what saves this ministry of three ministers is that there's no contract head of department. I don't think so. I think that this ministry has in place persons who are permanently appointed under the public service legislation. This is not, the Honourable Member says no, she has contract people up there too.
Honourable member, please, there's no interruption, please.
No. The public wants the engagement. The public wants to know if they have a contract man up there too, on a 3-year contract. And the Honourable Member said that possibly she has a contract man up there. But it has been a problem created by the government in the public service that there are people who are contracted and are sitting on the heads of people who have rendered distinguished service. I don't think, in spite of the Honourable Member trying to mislead this Honourable Chamber, I don't think one of those contract people are at that Ministry of Transport and Works where they have 3 ministers. So that, Your Honour, let me look at my final notes. I like to be comprehensive. I'm going to sit very shortly. And yes, the last thing the Honourable Members said that I recorded was that roadworks are ongoing. And look, you told me not to address the Honourable Member for St. Joseph by a certain epithet. No, roadworks are ongoing. I started by referring to the 6 pothole patchers. You don't wish me to talk, and I can talk. Well, let me talk. This minister got up here today and told the people of Barbados that roadworks are ongoing. I don't know where the honourable member for St. Thomas is today. Maybe she is shedding tears on Bridgefield. Shedding tears on Bridgefield. Bridgefield is now the worst road in Barbados. Perhaps not quite as bad as one in Bank Hall, where you represent. But if you plead the case for the worst road in Barbados being in Bank Hall, in one of the side streets, that's how they treat the people in side streets. I am saying to this minister, through you, sir, that Bridgefield Road is the worst road in Barbados. And it is worse than Ford's Road. I think those possibly, and there's a road, you see, I don't want to say this now because as he did in the 22 election, they fixed the road from Pilgrim Road right down to Gibbons on the day before the election. On the day before the election now, I am not pleading a case of self-interest, but based on what the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast has said, and I know that there's a very special relationship between Southeast and East Christchurch. And the third worst road in Barbados, no, I'm going to elevate that to second. The road that leads from Pilgrim Road around to the police training center. I think that is number 2. Yes, the worst roads in Barbados. Maybe that too will be done like the last time on the day before the election, but that's the worst road in Barbados, and they're both present today. They are both present today. The honourable member for St. James Central, he traverses that road quite often, and he will nod his head shortly when I classify that road as the second worst road in Barbados. But in the absence of the honourable member for St. Thomas, I am prepared to plead her case. She said it in here before. She said it in here before that she doesn't understand why this government treats her so badly in its failure and refusal to fix Bridgefield. Tears were shed in here around the estimates. And we are on the subject of road works because the honourable member introduced it. I have the right to stand here today and refer to the worst roads in Barbados, but I'm not going to do it because they're going to send out their correspondent and he will broadcast it all over social media, and then he will come back and applaud the government the next day. So I am going to just mention 4 roads for his attention. Bridgefield, Ford's Road, that road along the back of the airport, and the road in respect of which the honourable member for Christchurch East Central shed tears at the estimates this year when he launched an attack on the honourable member for St. Michael South East. He lamented the poor state of Lodge Road. Well, I'm not allowed to say who is absent, but I'm allowed to say who is present. And in this presence, of 14 government members, on the first day of the year, when the chaplain said that to whom in his prayer, they don't listen to the prayer, you know. He prayed this morning.
Honourable member, please deal with the amendment, please. You are on road rules, please deal with the amendment, sir, please.
In the prayer this morning, sir, which preceded this amendment, and I'm going to relate the two.
Honourable member, please speak to the amendment.
Well, my final plea on behalf of the people of Barbados is that they should try and fix Lodge Road in Christchurch. They should try and fix Bridgefield in St. Thomas. They should try and fix in Christchurch East rather than demoting prison officers and fire officers. Please fix the roads. It is more important to fix the roads in Christchurch East than it is to demote prison officers. That's the point I'm making, sir.
Honourable member, that has no nexus, please.
No nexus?
None.
I see. I agree with you, sir, because the person who demotes prison officers is
Honourable
not the
member,
Minister of
please
Transport and
stick to
Works.
the legislation.
Yes. Yes. And so, Your Honour, the people of this country cannot be satisfied with the infrastructure of this country. In fact, I will close by saying that the crumbling infrastructure in this country represents the state of government in this country. And not only government, but governance. Because it must concern you, sir, as a citizen, that you cannot drive for 1 mile in this country, not even on the ABC highway, unless you meet a pothole. But of course, the assurance is given today that there's something called a pothole patcher. I don't know if it's a human being or if it's equipment. The honourable member will clarify. But on the cusp of an election, 7 years into office, the Minister of Transport and Works is now saying to the people of Barbados, do not worry. We have 6 pothole patchers on the way, and all the problems in Jerusalem will be solved within a month when they come. Well, I assume you're going to lay off the fella on Facebook, because when the pothole patchers come, there's nothing for him to do. What is his reward, though? That's rhetorical. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
I have no interest. I have no interest in cursing anybody. I'm just happy that he's finished. It really has been torture to listen to the honourable member for the last few hours. The member for
Honourable, your mic is on?
Central.
Your mic is on?
My mic is on, sir. I know he would like to mute it, but he can't. The honourable member for St. James Central reminded me of his days in the country watching Cane Fires, and it would die down. It would die down, reminiscent of the honourable member saying, in closing, and then a little wisp of wind would pick it back up, and he would be gone again. And that has happened to us about 8 times this morning.
Honourable, please allow
The honourable member has repeated himself more times than an exercise book. But
Honourable is point of order. Honourable is a point of order.
He's misleading.
Honourable was a point of order.
He is misleading. He is misleading you, sir.
Honourable, there's no point of order, please.
Am I allowed to explain?
Honourable, there's no point of order. There's none.
Mr. Speaker, this debate has seen us being visited with some interesting perspectives from the Leader of the Opposition. They tell me, though, that he doesn't only not know his history, he doesn't know his political history, he doesn't know his legislative history, and he really doesn't understand the context of what is happening and what brings us here. But instead, he finds it convenient to palaver about roads and tint and a host of other things, some ills, some ill-advised, but nothing really that deals with what is before the chamber. Mr. Speaker, in 1992, this country was governed by the party that he now leads. In 1992, his party came to Parliament and amended the Road Traffic Act so as to provide for the very thing that he now says is unconstitutional. His party passed the amendment to the Road Traffic Act to provide for fixed penalties. They left government in '94, came back in 2008, didn't touch it, and left again in 2018. But the honourable member says, this is so simple. This is so simple. They enacted it. completed a term without bringing it into place, occupied the halls of government of this country for a decade, did nothing with it, but now the honourable member wants to chastise this administration when we are finally bringing into fruition something that his administration did. You should be thanking us, sir. You should be thanking us. But with all the simplicity that it contains, it tells me that he has not even troubled to look at where the amendments are coming. You see, he hasn't even touched the bill. He used the word road traffic on many occasions, but on no occasion did in any of the paragraphs, long, rambling, and winding, that he treated us to, did he condescend in any way on the legislative provisions that we have brought to Parliament. But in another place, sir, they will call that co-swiping. And it is the season for you to remember to co-swipe, just like he did yesterday in his press conference. Mr. Speaker, what do we have here and why are we here? Section 121.10 of the bill, of the Act, let me talk about the Act, of the Act, provides for the maximum, provides the regime for the penalties. It tells you, and I'll read it for the chamber. It tells you, sir, what is the amount that the penalty can be. It says, sir, the fixed penalty referred to in this section is one of the following: $50, half of the maximum fine to which a person not previously convicted is liable on summary conviction of that offense, whichever is the less, or such fine as the minister prescribes, not exceeding one-half the maximum amount of the fine to which a person previously convicted is liable on summary conviction. So you have, say, the $50, half of the fine if you've never been convicted, and half of the fine if you had been convicted. Now, Mr. Speaker, when we began to work on the fixed penalty regime, we immediately recognized that a regime of fines established in 1992, in many cases as far back as 1984, when the bill was first passed, sir. And you know, 84, that's how long ago? 39 years now? Almost 40 years. The level of the fine set in law at that time would hardly make sense in today's environment, sir. That is why you're dealing with $50. The extent of a $50 penalty in 1984, or put another way, perhaps in economic terms, what you could buy with $50 in 1984 is very, very, very different to what you could buy with $50 today. And that is why across the criminal regime, whenever we have come to Parliament to make amendments to legislation, we have looked at what fine existed and what would be a comparable fine in today's age. No one would argue, sir, that a fine set out in law in 1984 could be reasonable today. In 1984, you could probably have bought a snow cone for 20 cents in the bus stand. 20 cents. In 1984, bus fare was probably 25 cents a ride. In law, sir, we talk, and in economics, I believe we talk about the present day value of money. So that as we look at compensation matters, we look at what it is that the court would have awarded 30 or 40 years ago, and what would be an equivalent amount today. $50 40 years ago has to be increased so as to be commensurate with today's values. And therefore, recognizing that with a fixed penalty regime, a person is going to be invited to just pay the penalty and move along without going to court. We had to make sure, sir, of several things. One, that the amount of the penalty would have to be such that it would be an incentive for the person not to go through a court process, but it still had to bear in mind the realities of the current value of money. And therefore, it was obvious to us that we needed to amend Section 121.10. Otherwise, our fixed penalty regime would have such low penalties that a person could break the traffic laws as they pleased and just pay the penalty. So the first thing we had to fix was what are the things that would allow us to have a sensible penalty regime which can allow the minister to establish what the penalties are, but that they not be linked to penalties that would have been established 40 years ago. That's the first thing. And for that reason, we therefore had to bring this amendment so as to allow the minister to impose sensible penalties. The second thing that we had to do was to allow the minister to be able to determine what are the offenses that the regime would relate to. We had a whole set of offenses, we have it in the existing legislation, but the truth is offenses have fallen off the books or will fall off the books. Other offenses will come in as time goes by, and therefore it was important, rather than listing offenses, to be able to give the minister the power to say, well, these are the offenses that we'll be applying fixed penalty regime stuff. Now, throughout it, Mr. Speaker, I really don't get the sense that the Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition, had any burning animus against the fixed penalty regime. He could not, because as I pointed out to the Chamber, it was his party that brought it into place. But, well, I thought I was going to begin my speech by saying, I want to begin where the Honourable Member left off, but he was leaving off on so many occasions that he left off about 4 or 5 points ago, the matter of the constitutionality. Now, I don't want to be disrespectful. It isn't in my nature. I wasn't brought up that way. From the time the Honourable Member took that seat there, he has found every occasion in the book, every reason in the book, to pontificate about constitutionality of this and the constitutionality of that, and everything this government is doing is unconstitutional, and we are breaking the Constitution. You know, Mr. Speaker, it would behoove an eminent counsel, if he was so convinced of the unconstitutionality of the various laws that we pass and the steps that we take, to put his money where his mouth is.
Point of order, sir.
Point of order, sir. Point of order, sir.
The Honourable Member is misleading the House. I was listening and trying to count the number of occasions on which I have challenged any legislation on the basis of its constitutionality. And if I start counting, it would not be more than 4 pieces of legislation, so that the public would not, and you, sir, would not want the Honourable Member to mislead you in saying that I have challenged every piece of legislation as to its constitutionality. That is simply not true. He is deliberately misleading you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Continue, Honourable.
The Honourable Member loves to count. He's been counting in here all morning. Happily, when it comes to the opposition, there's only one number that matters. 0. That of no value. If the Honourable Member says it is 4 occasions that he has challenged the constitutionality in this chamber, I want to ask him, and how many times have you challenged it in the court? You see, that's the point, you know, Mr. Speaker. There's some of us in here who have practiced law, our only profession is law. The Honourable Member lives in the court. And if he's so convinced that the bills that we have passed are unconstitutional, Why has he not used the skills that he has?
Point of order, sir. The honourable member knows that you challenge the legislation only when, oh, he has one too.
No, no,
sorry.
Honourable, I want to hear the point of order. I want to hear it. No, Honourable, you speaking to the chamber
you.
here. I want to hear the point of order.
No, I was wondering if he
You-
was.
you- you're not
I was
referring
wondering
to-
if he's going to apologize
Honourable
for
members,
demoting prison officers and fire officers. But
Honourable-
let me speak, sir.
Honourable, please speak to order. I will ask you to sit. If you repeat that, I will ask you to sit. You can make no reference to any point of order and anything to do with prison officers. I will not allow it in
And
this
fire
chamber.
officers, sir.
But I'm fire officers.
Yeah, let's not deal with
Speak
those
or I
today.
will ask you to sit down.
Yes.
I'm listening to you,
The
sir.
honourable member knows, as a lawyer, and he's a senior lawyer, that you don't have legislation passed here and run across by the court the next day. He knows that. So let him, I know he's not misleading you
He's not Honourable,
precisely, but he's misleading the public.
Honourable member, you have no point of order.
Well, the honourable member wants to contend that he's able to say in here that the laws we pass are unconstitutional, but that it suits him not to challenge it. That is his business, sir. We are satisfied with the constitutionality of the laws we pass, and in this instance, it is a red herring. And he ought to be ashamed, because if it is unconstitutional, no, it was unconstitutional when his government passed it. And the fact is, Mr. Speaker, that we have now, I don't like schooling him because I feel he hit a little hard. You see, Mr. Speaker, he is misunderstanding the unconstitutionality of a mandatory minimum penalty, which you know quite well. The courts have long determined that a mandatory minimum penalty is a penalty that removes the discretion of a judge, and therefore, for that reason, it is unconstitutional. But that is to be completely distinguished from an administrative monetary penalty, which is what we deal with here, which is what his administration passed into the law back in 1992, which is what the traffic wardens have been doing every day up and down Bridgetown when people park in the wrong place. The traffic warden serve you with a penalty. They give you a notice, a mandatory penalty. So we have been using mandatory penalties now for a long time. Moreover, sir, we have put mandatory penalties in place in relation to possession of cannabis. We put mandatory penalties in place
Honourable, start interrupting, please.
in relation to the market. We have said from the time we came to government in 2018 that we considered one of our missions to be to prevent the unnecessary criminalization of Barbadians. People commit traffic offenses every day, but they don't do it because they're villains. An individual hurrying to get to some place, speeding. An individual whose brake lights might not be working. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if my brake lights are working or not. Do you know when yours are working, sir? You don't know. I don't believe the honourable member. I hardly think that the honourable member, leader of the opposition, gets in his car and tells somebody, go and stand behind my car while I press the brake. I don't think he does that, because he would accidentally run them over. He wouldn't do something like that. So the point is that traffic offenses are of a kind that do not generally carry the animus, the mens rea of a person intending to commit an offense. Sometimes they do, but for the most part, they don't. And we have always felt that we should not criminalize Barbadians, give them a criminal record, have them to go into court and be found to be guilty of committing one offense or another in circumstances where administrative penalties could fit the bill. And what is that bill, sir? You don't get a criminal record against you. You don't have to take your time and hire a lawyer to go to court. Now, very often, sir, and I know that, eminent councillor, you don't do traffic matters. But sometimes, you know, sir, in our younger days, when we used to do them, you might charge a man $500 and he go court and the magistrate put a $300 fine on him. And the truth is, he would have probably gave $300 fine if he'd gone and plead guilty just himself. Okay? So you don't now incur the cost of paying a lawyer to go and defend the matter. When a policeman charges you with a criminal offense, let's work through it. He has to prepare the statements. A summons has to be prepared. The summons then has to be served on the defendant, who now comes to court. And who, if he pleads guilty, if he pleads not guilty, will have to come to court repeatedly, sometimes for years. Now, a citizen X, when faced with the choice of being told, listen, we consider you have breached the law. Your brake light is broken. It isn't working. You're driving without insurance. There are any number of things that are objectively proven, but that people go to court and plead not guilty simply because they're hoping for the best. It is a far better arrangement just to say, this is the penalty, go and pay it, and move along. Most people, I think most rational people, would adopt that approach. They know, mea culpa, I'm guilty, mea culpa. They'll go, pay the fine, and move along, without using up the police officer's time, without using up the court system's time. Those are the reasons why all across the world, administrative monetary penalties are imposed on individuals. The honourable member wants to drag a red herring across this proverbial trail by saying that the government wants to punish people. Penalty. They're imposing a penalty because they want to punish people. Mr. Speaker, that is so empty and absurd. You know, I've said I want to be respectful. In law, in the Road Traffic Act, an offense is created. It is called an offense, whatever it is. And the law says that if found guilty, you shall be liable to a particular fine. And the magistrate, as you well know, sir, can impose from a low fine to a high fine. In some instances, you may even find yourself subject to imprisonment. Now, we are saying, let us move all of that one side and have a simple system of administrative penalties to replace a penalty imposed by a magistrate that you might catch in a bad mood a particular morning. Because when he was driving up to Horse Hill Court, some vagabond driving a red Toyota passed you out in Blackman's Corner and almost rate you off. And by the time he get court, he vexed with everybody in the world. And anybody at all that got a traffic matter. And I just said, district head, but it could be any court. There's somebody here who will well understand not just the sociology of law, but the sociology of I remember one of my lecturers used to say, you know, if you get a judge in a bad mood, the wife ain't cooking the breakfast for you, the children make you late, the dog dead, whatever. He listened to, remember for St. Michael's South, sorry for Christian South on the radio, a number of things. You do not know how that judge will rule when he gets there. So you're opening up yourself to a $100 fine or a $2,000 fine. Those are the realities. I think they call that the School of American Realism. So all we are saying is, let us put a system in place. You know what it is predictable, there's no emotionalism attached to it, there's no risk of a judge being in a bad mood. You go and you go and pay the fine, and you do it online, and you have paid your debt literally to society. How much more convenient is that? What is the penalty that the honourable member is talking about that suggests that we are being rapacious. No, sir. We are, in fact, removing a lot of the inconvenience, a lot of the hardship from what currently exists. Now, if the honourable member was saying that we are putting a penalty in place where there was never any penalty, perhaps you could understand. Perhaps you could understand. But we are moving from a system which says you can be liable to $3,000 or 2 years imprisonment and saying instead, pay $500. Pay $500 to your treasury. Does that appear, sir, to be a government that is looking to punish people? Where is the punishment? Surely, honourable member, having passed the administrative penalty arrangements in 1992, is not now saying that we should resile from the position that his party touted and keep what currently exists. I don't believe he's saying that. But he's arguing out of both sides of his mouth. Because on the one hand, he says, it is so simple to fix. We should do it ever since. But on the other hand, he's saying, but it's unconstitutional. But when they're trying to frighten the Bajans, when they're trying to mask the public to pay fines, but that's what the magistrate does when he rules. Hey, I will give many more than you. I will give many more than you. And I have given many more than you in the last 8 years. Mr. Speaker, the advantages to what we're proposing, we think are obvious. But if the honourable member feels that this is driven purely by the position of the executive, he'd be mistaken. Because the entire judiciary, both High Court and lower court, have been asking us, wherever possible, remove certain offenses from having to go before the judicial system. The Chief Justice has met, we have a committee called the the Criminal Justice Reform Committee. We have a committee chaired by the Chief Justice called the Criminal Justice Reform Committee. It is one of the recommendations of the Needham's Point Declaration, made a document of this House. The honourable member doesn't like to read the things that are in this House. If only he would know so much more. And that Criminal Justice Reform Committee, not foolishness, that committee has been working with us to try to get cases out of the judicial system. Out of the judicial system. The leader of the opposition.
Honourable, please.
The leader of the opposition wants to appear blind to the facts. But if he were truthful with himself, he will know that in our traffic court, and we don't have a traffic court other than in District A, but we say that the traffic court is sitting wherever it is, he would know that there's a tremendous backlog of cases to be done. And every time the police charge, we stop the police from going to traffic events, going to traffic accidents. You know what we're talking about. We've removed from them the burden of going to almost 6,000 fender benders every year so that they can more effectively do policing. Whenever the police go to a fender bender, the first thing they do is warn you, and the Road Traffic Act, you may be prosecuted. That process has gone through the window. We're trying to make the work of police officers more efficient, remove unnecessary things for them. Every single time that a police officer has to show up at District A or District F or he stands for a traffic offense, it means that chances are he's worked the night before and now got to go there to deal with traffic offenses. We're getting those things out of the system. Now, the honourable member is free to disavow the traditions on which he now stands, but he cannot remove the fact that the Democratic Labour Party is who put this in place in 1982. So tell us what his position is. Is he for it or is he against it? Is he for it or is he against it? I was saying that I can't sense any burning hatred for it, but more and more I'm beginning to feel that the honourable member is disavowing the rich traditions of the party that he now leads. That is why he put people out of George Street. Mr. Speaker, this matter should not attract too much attention in this chamber. It is a small amendment, but a necessary amendment. When the penalties are determined, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Public Works has indicated that it will shortly go before Cabinet. They will be laid in Parliament and under the act as we're amending by way of negative resolution, so they will come here. But we're asking Barbadians, and it will receive all the necessary publicity so people will know. But this is a step in the right direction, a step whose time has come. But when one wonders why it wasn't done by the party that put it in place in the last decade, you don't have to wonder about us now, because we are doing it. The Chief Justice has asked respectfully, can you please take these matters out of the magistrates' court so that our magistrates can focus on delivering justice between individuals. That is the key for the work of the magistracy, and not trying to deal with this body speeding, that body ain't got a brake light, that body wasn't wearing the seatbelt, those kinds of things. They do not require a magistrate's time. They don't require a police prosecutor's time. They don't require police officers to come and give evidence, sir. So this is about efficiency. And yes, you'll be able to pay your fines online. So you can sit down in the convenience of your own home without having to go to a particular court and do these things. We've put an entire online platform so that people can make payments that are due to the state online. Mr. Speaker, I don't know that I really need to add anything else. I think that this ticketing system is one that I don't mind the origins. I don't mind that it was a DLP initiative. I don't mind it at all. There are some things that the DLP has done that this administration is happy to see through. Happy to see through, except in relation to the honourable member for Christchurch South. We might prefer to see him out rather than through. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. I believe that it will address some fundamental needs of our criminal justice system. It will bring transparency to our process. It will bring certainty. And most importantly, it will bring convenience and ease of doing things to the Barbadian public who are affected by it. As I said, sir, most of the criminal offenses are not committed by people who are knowingly engaged in criminal activity. Even the slowest driver among us someday might just find themselves over the speed limit. Things like this happen. And we don't want to be criminalizing people and having a criminal record which says you are guilty. We want to remove that from the system. Some of us may drive when we travel overseas, and we may commit traffic offenses. You get a summons, you go and pay the thing with your credit card, and it is the end of that. That is the direction that we're going in, and I support it fully, sir.
Honourable member for St. Michael's Southeast.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:15 p.m., please.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2:15 p.m. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2:15 p.m.